For anybody here in the room who needs ASL or CART assistance, we've got that on the screen over there, okay?
Tim, what you gonna line up over here? Yeah, that's perfect. Sharon. Yeah, you guys can just stand over here. This is good. Why don't we get everybody here? Do you guys all want to come this way?
Where do you want me to go?
Where do you want me to go? You're perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm perfect.
You're great right there. Hey, Joe, you want to come on this side?
Yeah.
Oh.
Jan Lieber, everybody, the chair and CEO of the MTA.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to everybody, especially our friends from the advocacy community for joining us today. I'm Jan Lieber, Chair and CEO of the MTA, and I'm here just to introduce our team, MTA Chief Accessibility Officer, Carmel Arroyo, did so much to get us to this moment. New York City Transit President Rich Davey. Rich, where are you? There you go. MTA General Counsel Paige Graves, who was really essential. Where are you, Paige? Well done. And the Deputy Chief Development Officer and really one of the leaders of the capital program, Tim Mulligan. Tim, where are you? Congratulations. Tim, I appreciate that because Tim did an amazing job of helping us to get to this moment and working closely with our now partners in the disability community to help bring us here. Today is a truly historic day for the MTA, for New York, and I would say for civil rights in America. After 5 years of back and forth in court, we've come to an unprecedented agreement that affirms the MTA's commitment, absolute commitment, to universal accessibility in the subway system. Under the terms of the arrangement that we've come to, the MTA is committed to maintain the same level of investment in ADA accessibility in not just current but future capital programs until we achieve at least 95% of stations being accessible. And as I was discussing with Gene Ryan before we came out, we're going to get to 100. We're just waiting for the technology developments that will allow us to achieve that on those last few most difficult stations. This is huge. Today is huge. There is no other public agency in the country that has ever made the commitment of the scale that we're making in terms of dollars or number of stations. And to our incredible disability advocates who have been fighting for this passionately and for so long, you are going to have a voice in this process. You will be sharing your input with us every step of the way. This will be a partnership as long as I am here, not just lip service. We're going to select the stations. We're going to do this together. I want to give credit to all of the advocacy organizations here today, the Brooklyn Center for the Independence of the Disabled, the Harlem Independent Living Center, Disabled in Action, Metropolitan New York, and New York Statewide Senior Action Council, also our Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA is represented. I'm sure that I have not listed every organization, but you must know that every one of you, because it was a broad coalition that you assembled on the disability advocacy side, every one of you is appreciated and acknowledged. Oftentimes you have been our critics, but in this case, you have been our conscience. And now you are our partners. This is a legal settlement. This is a legal settlement, but it really wasn't the result of what goes on in the courtroom or between lawyers at all. The settlement was made possible because in the last few years, we at the MTA have come to the same place as our partners in the advocacy community. And more important, we were able to prove to ourselves and to the world that it's not only a right, a civil right, but it's actually achievable to drastically accelerate the pace of ADA accessibility in our system. It took 30+ years for the MTA to make 120 stations plus or minus accessible. The turning point came when we adopted the historic 20 to 24 capital program. It included an unprecedented $5.2 billion investment in ADA accessibility and committed us to get 70 stations done. After it took all those years, a generation, to get to 100 or 120, we said we're going to do 70 in 5 years. And now, lo and behold, we started knocking them out faster than ever. Since the start of the pandemic, we added 15 stations to the map. Bedford Avenue on the L, Astoria Boulevard on the NW, 86th Street on the R, Bedford Park on the D, B, Eastern Parkway on the 2-3, Greenpoint Avenue on the G, Chambers Street on the JZ, Gun Hill Road on the 5, 59th Street on the NR, First Avenue on the L, 57th Street on the NQ, R and W, Avenue H on the Q, Times Square Shuttle, the oldest part of the system, wasn't accessible. A station, a part of the system that hundreds of thousands of people are using every day. We fixed that during COVID. 170th Street on the 4, Livonia Avenue on the L. There are thousands. I just listed 15 stations. Think of the thousands and thousands of people who now can get to where they want to go, whether it's jobs or education or culture or whatever it is, to visit family and friends, to get to the right medical appointments, whatever. It's changed people's lives. And that was just during COVID. Those 15 stations were more than the entire 7-year period from 2012 to 2018. And the last 2 years, we've awarded contracts for another 23 stations. We've got 16 more in procurement right now. All told, there are 79 accessibility projects currently in development. We're also working to leverage private development to add even more stations. You may be aware that we opened a new elevator in Times Square just last month, and it was fully funded by an adjacent developer. This was made possible by a recently enacted zoning change, which the MTA had pushed for some years, that incentivizes companies building near transit stations to include elevators and other ADA improvements in their buildings. That's a win for everybody. Now, for too long, I've said it before, it seemed as though there were two different subway maps, one for the general public and one for New Yorkers with disabilities, seniors, parents with strollers, and more, who were forced to contort their plans and divert throughout to get to stations that had elevators and other ADA accessibility elements. Because it's not just about mobility issues. We know ADA is for everybody, and there are other forms of disability that are addressed when we do these ADA accessibility upgrades. Now, this is personal for me. I said to Dan Brown, who is, along with Stuart, the leaders of the legal team that represented the advocates in this work, my mother spent much of her career working on education issues. She was on the community boards and PTAs. She ultimately served on the State Board of Regents. And she started a literacy organization that was in Washington Heights, and she lived on the west side. And eventually, and she died 6 or 8 months ago, but a few years ago, she said to me, I can't get on the subway anymore because her nearby station didn't have elevators. I don't feel like a New Yorker. That was a change in her life. Today, we at the MTA and the disability advocates are joining hands and committing as partners to building a fully inclusive system that means that everybody who wants to get to a job or education and everything New York has to offer, that they feel included, that they truly feel like New Yorkers. So with that, and I'm going to turn it over to I'm going to acknowledge Q again, because we wouldn't be here. This is an amazing guy. Many of you know him because of his work in the community, but he's kind of a character. Do we all agree? But he's been an amazing force since he got here at the MTA to keeping us focused on moving this issue forward, and a great spirit and a great member of our team. So I want to acknowledge Q. In a moment, the folks who are going to speak for, several folks who are going to speak for the advocacy side of the equation, and they'll be introduced by Dan Brown and Stuart, right? But first, I want to hear from Rich Davey, the president of New York City Transit, and then from Kwamela Arroyo. Rich.
Thank you, Jano. First, there are many folks here in the room who I haven't had a chance to meet, but I did want to speak just for a moment because, first of all, this is a historic occasion, obviously. Accessibility is personal for me. Some of you have heard my story, my personal story about that. But I worked for a smaller agency up in Boston with similar challenges and frankly went through a similar process that advocates and stakeholders brought a lawsuit against the MBTA about 15 years ago. It was settled just before I became general manager. And I can tell you from experience that while this is a historic day, we have a lot of work to do. I'm very well aware of that. We have a lot of work to do. And so you have my, I hope, you certainly have my commitment that we will continue to work on not only the capital issues that have been discussed, but also the operating things that we can do better. Station announcements, tactile warning, go down the list. And so I just wanted to publicly say that you have Transit's commitment that while today is a very, very important day and a lot of hard work, which I was not part of, the whole team that did this, we have much work to do, and you've got a partner in Transit who will work with you. So thank you for allowing me to spend a minute and be part of this historic occasion. And Q, I'll turn it over to you.
I was remiss in one respect, which is, in addition to Q, a member of our MTA team for this period of time we've been working on this was a board member who you usually don't get that involved in specifics. And that was Victor Calisi, who's behind the, Victor is here. Victor, thank you for being a passionate advocate for this cause, this issue, and being a great board member of the MTA. We're so grateful that you were with us through this whole ride. Q.
Thank you, Jano, and thank you all for being here. Today is the start of a new day for the MTA and our partners in the advocacy community. For a long time, it's been an adversarial relationship, and now, as Jano said, it is clearer than ever that we're on the same team. For the first time in its history, the MTA has committed to system-wide accessibility with a clear timeline, 2055. And the numbers do add up. I'm happy to talk to anyone about that. We know the public, and particularly the advocates gathered with us today, will hold us accountable to this ambitious schedule, and we look forward to working together to shape the MTA's long-term investment and delivery of an accessible system. There are many people who made this day possible, including former Commissioner Victor Calisi, who is here with us, and some who are no longer with us. Our colleague and friend at the MTA, Peter Sistrom, who left us far too soon, worked tirelessly with all of us to make this happen. And Edith Prentice, who passed away last year, come to mind immediately. Edith was a fiery advocate for New Yorkers with disabilities, and I'm lucky to have called her a mentor and a friend. She understood that I had the skill sets to deliver change at the MTA, and that I could be an insider advocate who creates a bridge between the community and top-level executives here by speaking about our lived experience of navigating the transit system with a disability. I also want to shout out Chris Pangilinan, who is with us virtually today. Chris was a plaintiff in this lawsuit who became the ultimate MTA partner as the new vice president for paratransit. He understands that the MTA is putting our money where our mouth is and that we're committed to real change and real progress. So thank you, Chris, for joining us. Creating a more accessible system will be a net positive for paratransit. Customers who today must rely on our vans and for-hire vehicles are going to have more accessible transit options, and that's a good thing. Getting to 95% subway accessibility is not going to be easy, but it is more than a worthy mission. There are more than 1 million people living with a disability here in New York City, and more than 1.5 million New Yorkers over the age of 65, to whom I want to say, forget about Florida, forget about North Carolina. We want you to age in place, and we will deliver a transit system that will give you the opportunity to do so and enjoy all that New York has to offer. There are over 250,000 children under the age of 2 here in New York City whose families need to navigate the city with strollers. And they too will benefit from these accessibility enhancements that we're talking about today. These are our family members, our friends and neighbors, and we should all be able to move around the city freely. And I am excited to work closely with the community so that one day they can. You heard it from Jano, and I'll say it again. Part of this commitment, in black and white you have it, talks about a biannual catch-up with the community and my team and myself to talk about our progress, what we did in the last 6 months and what we're doing in the future 6. So you all will be part of this progress in real time, and I am so happy for that. I am a firm believer that the best policies and solutions come from everyday users who know firsthand what needs to change, and that is the only way the MTA becomes better. So thank you all for being here.
This is just awesome. I've been told, rumor has it, people don't really want to hear from lawyers, but I do, and I heard the word adversarial, and I said, what? I do want to thank everyone from the MTA and Paige and even my adversaries over there for being part of really just this amazing event that's going to lead to such a better New York City for everyone. And it has been my best experience of my life, the most humbling to represent these clients, as you mentioned, following in a long line of civil rights advocates. And everyone, we got it done, and it's really amazing. So with that, I want to turn it over to my co-counsel, Stuart Seaborn of Disability Rights Advocates, and then you could hear from our amazing clients. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, everybody. It's Stuart Seaborn. I'm from Disability Rights Advocates. As Dan said, we're a national nonprofit legal center. We've been in existence for 30 years, working in New York for 13 of those years. And we first started working in New York. We had a wonderful group of advocates, a lot in this room, some following online. And one of the priorities they told us was access to the subway system. So we started doing some research, met with legal experts, and many folks just told us it cannot be done. It cannot be done. You're going to be stuck with 100 key stations and that's it. But thanks to these wonderful efforts, this persistence of this wonderful advocacy community, and of course the commitment of the MTA, we have something that is not only going to benefit us, but all of our children and grandchildren. And as I said, it's universal access, strollers, people in wheelchairs, everybody. So I'm going to go through the list. We're going to have a group of folks speak. We've also got folks from the Bronx Independent Living Services and the Harlem Independent Living Center who are available online, they're following the feed and can speak to all of you afterwards. And we have a wonderful group here in person. I'm going to start with Dr. Sharon McLennan Weir of the Center for the Independence of the Disabled New York. Sharon is right behind us. We also have Sasha Blair Goldenson of the Elevator Action Network. Anybody who's ever done anything around elevators and the subways is going to know Sasha. We have Jean Ryan of Disabled in Action, one of a long-time ADA action groups, not only here, but they're known nationally. Jean has been an advocate for many years. And finally, we have Joe Rappaport of the Brooklyn Center for the Independence of the Disabled. Joe has been a subway advocate for longer than a lot of us have been alive, and he's going to share some of his thoughts too. Thank you.
Am I right in front? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. It's definitely a historic day. As you guys know, I'm the new executive director for the Center for Independence Center of Independence of the Disabled of New York. I'm happy to be here in honor of all the disability advocates and the work that Susan Duha, the previous executive director, the Sydney board, Sydney staff, as well as all the advocates that are sitting here in this momentous day. It's important for us to recognize that accessibility means everything. Having an access to a subway system that can allow people to travel to see their friends, to date, to enjoy theater, to educate themselves is an important thing for all individuals. People with disabilities should not be segregated, and having a subway system that is accessible for everyone means a difference. As a survivor who fell in the subway track in 2015, I am happy to say that accessibility must mean safety. And this historic day will allow for all of us to travel safely without feeling that, your life is in peril if you're going into the subway system. It's important to have elevators, and elevators matter for everyone. So thank you, and please, please, please continue to advocate, because your voice truly matters. Thank you.
Pinch me. I'm Sasha Blair Goldenson. I'm a plaintiff in this case, and I'm also a member of the Elevator Action Group at Rise and Resist, a citizen advocacy group that's devoted to subway accessibility for everyone. I'm wearing my Elevators Are For Everyone t-shirt to recognize the dedicated advocacy of this group, people like Timothy Lunsford Stevens, who got us to this day. For 5 years, we've been at MTA headquarters, outside Judge Hagler's courtroom, on the radio, in the newspaper, doing everything we could to get the word out. Advocates, DRAs, attorneys, and many allies, so many allies, fought the MTA for 5 years and made this happen. Because disability rights are human rights. I'm also wearing this Elevators Are For Everyone shirt to celebrate what we've achieved. This agreement takes Elevators Are For Everyone and disability rights being human rights from protest slogans to MTA policy. This is a great day. But reality check. Reality is real. And taking the New York subway today is still difficult and even dangerous for so many who need safe, stair-free access. And I'm glad to hear President Davey and the others recognize there's still a lot to do. People with disabilities like me, seniors, delivery workers, tourists, and parents with strollers like Malaysia Goodson. Most stations are inaccessible still, and many elevators break down daily, and that won't change overnight. But it will over time because of this hard-won settlement that takes us from hope to guarantee. It's a subway accessibility playbook that future MTAs, riders, and advocates can all follow until every station is accessible and everyone can ride. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Joe Rappaport. I'm the Executive Director of the Brooklyn Center for Independence of the Disabled, or BCID. BCID is an independent living center, one of the 5 centers here in New York City, and some of my colleagues were also plaintiffs in this lawsuit. We're led by, advocate, and serve disabled people, many with mobility disabilities. Some of our colleagues, past and present, are here, part of the BCID team. Hallelujah. Finally, some good news. This extraordinary agreement ensures that eventually no one will be shut out of the fastest, best way to get around town. I've been a transit advocate in New York City for nearly 4 decades. and a disability advocate for about 2. This agreement is the most important advance for transit and accessibility in all that time. For BCID, like the other plaintiffs and our attorneys at Disability Rights Advocates, this is the culmination of years of advocacy, both in and out of the courtroom. We're immensely proud that we and the MTA have reached this day, and we look forward to working with you as the system is made more accessible. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jean Ryan, President of Disabled in Action, otherwise known as DIA. This legally binding and funded agreement between our lawyers, DRA, the plaintiffs, and the MTA is momentous because Disabled in Action and other plaintiffs have been fighting for years, way more than 5, to get subway access. There is nothing as fast, affordable, and convenient as the subway. Eventually, people with disabilities and caregivers with strollers and anyone who needs a subway elevator will be able to take the subway just like everyone else does. Thank you.
Okay. At this point, I think we're going to, Tim, are we going to just take questions on topic?
On topic questions for now, sir. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. First
So
up is.
I may ask some of the folks on representing the plaintiffs team to answer, but let's have at it.
Kevin Duggan, AM New York, right there in front of you.
Thanks. Hey, Giano. I was wondering, do you have a rough cost estimate of how much this could cost the agency overall this time? And is maintenance of the elevators and the ADA facilities part of the commitment as well in any way?
So two things. One is what we're committing to is we none of us know what inflation is going to be, obviously, especially right now. But what we're committing to is the same level of effort in terms of the $5 billion investment as a portion of our in the number of stations associated with it going forward, and so that the dollar number will be adjusted based on inflation and the size of capital programs. But what we're committing to is a minimum level of effort consistent where we are now that can and hopefully will grow as MTA capital programs grow. So that's I would say the formula for this. It's a minimum level of effort, but it's expected to grow with the MTA capital programs, and it never can decline as a result of inflation. And the second question was?
Do you have like something locked in for maintenance?
Well, what we've been doing, and it's been, I think it's been putting us in the right direction, is that we've been asking the contractors who build these things. We've created very strong economic incentives, some would call them penalties, that require that once built, these new elevators have to deliver at a certain level. I think it's 98% availability, or else there are financial negative consequences for them. So that we're making the contractors responsible for these elevators even after the completion of those projects. So that's our fundamental strategy to deliver working elevators. We obviously have some challenges with the older elevators that are, that are wearing out, but we want to get availability up to at least, I think the number is 98%. Somebody's going to have to confirm it for me. Is 98 the right number?
Right now, it's a little bit less, sir, but we'll
No,
get
but the commitment level that we have with our that the contractors have to achieve.
They have to beat where we're currently at, or they don't get fully.
Okay, all right.
Just a quick clarification. You said it's a certain percentage of the capital plan. Right now, it's roughly a bit over 9%. Is that what you
All
agree
right,
to?
I'm gonna get out of my depth on the mechanics of this. Tim, do you want to try to?
14.6.
Okay, so go ahead. Go ahead, step up. And obviously, you guys are welcome to
Tim Mulligan, everybody.
It's 14.69% of the transit portion of the capital plan goes to ADA. That's the 5.2, and we'll stay at that level. Obviously, there's contingencies because, funding in the future is not a certain thing, and, depending on what happens with economic conditions, but the settlement anticipates many of those contingencies.
All right, Clayton Goose of the New York Daily News. Clayton.
I get a few. Why you settled the state lawsuit, you settled the federal lawsuit. Why haven't you settled the lawsuit that requires you to maintain the elevators? Why? What's the holdup there?
I'll take that.
Okay, go for it.
Q, let's talk about that tomorrow.
Well said. Well said.
Is that the full answer?
It's a pending litigation.
Yeah, it's pending, and we're in discussions.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a list of these that you're going to distribute, and exactly how many individual elevators are you planning to install over the next 40 years? Because some stations require 2 or 3 to get to the platform.
We have to make the stations fully accessible. I don't know that we have a number of elevators, but it's math, so I think we can answer the question.
Ramps is kind of a new thing that you seem to be laying out here. What kind of engineering insight can you give us that led you to making a bigger commitment to ramps?
There are certain conditions where ramps are effective. They may be both more cost efficient and also more engineering efficient than trying to do penetrations. So we're just leaving open that as you can create an ADA compliant accessibility model with ramps rather than elevators in certain conditions, and we're just leaving open that as an option.
Yeah, and then last one.
Am I saying that right? Okay. Yeah.
Last one. What happens if you don't hit these benchmarks? What's the penalty? And do you need the funding from congestion pricing to fund this work?
Okay. So no, I can answer the one about congestion pricing. Yes, our current capital program does depend to some degree on the revenues from congestion pricing. Remember, the last $15 billion of our roughly $55 billion capital program is revenues from congestion pricing. And although, as I said, there are roughly 80 ADA projects in development right now, so we're going, we're not waiting. At some point, if we don't have that last few bucks, 15 billion, it could impede our ability to get all the stations in this program done. However, we have an enforceable legal commitment that is the nature of this this agreement, and I'm going to invite the lawyers on both sides to comment on what the enforcement mechanism is.
Before the lawyers come up, I'll say, and you heard me mention it in my remarks, we are with the advocates on a biannual meeting talking about where we're at today, what just happened 6 months later, and what's about to happen 6 months from then. So the advocates will always know where we're at financially, and if the plans have to shift because the financial situation shift, they'll be with us making those decisions.
I invite you to explain it, because Clayton's first instinct is to say there's no real enforcement mechanism. So you have to explain how there is.
So, obviously you've heard it today, and it's so amazing to hear the MTA's commitment to the agreement, which of course will be available. And so we don't anticipate non-compliance with the agreement. There's obviously provisions in the agreement regarding what happens if there's not compliance, which if things can't be worked out, ends up back in court. But we don't anticipate that occurring. No, you don't go to jail. So, if they're off pace, for example, there'd be an obligation to make up the pace and to get things right. No one's going to jail. But
That's good.
All right, let's pick up the pace here. Remarkably, Andrew Siff started in this room when we began a couple hours ago. He's now in the News 4 street cruiser, and he has a question. Andrew, go ahead.
Tim, my question is off topic, so do you want me to wait or do you want me to launch right in?
Go ahead and wait. David Meyer, also remotely, with on-topic question. David?
Yes. 1 second. Let me get my video going. I'm just curious if I could hear from some of the advocates who sued. I understand the purpose of a lawsuit like this to, hold the MTA to the highest possible standard. So I guess I'm just wondering, what went into the decision to withdraw that, and whether you feel you might be losing leverage by sort of taking the legal process out of this picture.
So this is Stuart Seaborn, Disability Rights Advocates. There are two real points on that. One is this is gigantic. This is taking the largest subway system in the country, the most used subway system in the country, that now is around 25% accessibility, and bringing it above 95% over time. The other is that we have teeth in terms of court enforceability, and if there's some issue with things being off the pace, that they'll have to catch up. So it's the flip side. There's actually court enforceability of a commitment we've never seen before. We congratulate the MTA on making that commitment, but it's something that 30 years from now we'll be able to take to the judge if they're not on time.
All right, last on-topic question here. Dave, you got one? Go ahead. We'll take two. Dave Colon right there from Streets Blog.
Hey, I guess this is probably mostly for Jano. Are you worried that MTA construction costs are going to either hinder the ability to get this done in the 30 years, or if you get them more under control, that you could get this done even faster? Is that part of what stretched this thing out to a 30-year agreement?
Yeah, I mean, what we're assuming, the planning for this right now assumes roughly the same construction costs, but we are attacking construction costs broadly at the MTA. It's no secret to you, Dave. You cover us all the time. We've taken away a lot of the imbalances that led contractors to increase premiums. We're using what they call new delivery models, design build, where you're letting the contractor actually design the work. That's really important in the case of these kinds of accessibility upgrades, because it's the contractor who's going to have to figure out, do I need to expand the station in order to insert an elevator? What are the structural improvements that'll need to be made to accommodate the penetration that I need to do? So you're letting the contractor take full responsibility for the design as well as the construction. So we have strategies to reduce this. We're also working closely to simplify these elevators so that the ones we get are a little less bespoke, as they say, or a little less customized, and can be, bought. You'll never have off the shelf, because that's just not the nature of the way these things work in these stations, where size and configuration changes. But having the componentry be more standardized, have it be less complicated and more familiar to every different kind of elevator professional is really important. So we're doing a lot of things to make it less expensive over time. So far, with the new and improved MTA project management process, we have seen some success. We had very low bids, below estimate, on all of those projects that I mentioned that we started during COVID. So we have some initial positive signs of cost. It's way too early to declare victory, but we're very focused on making sure that we're getting better in that respect.
All right, last on-topic question. Jose Martinez, reporter for The City and brand ambassador for the Don Pepe Deli up at Penn Station. Jose.
Now you understand. This is standard and fair. This is literally.
This one's for you, Jano. And obviously, this takes a lot of time to develop, to plan out, to figure out which places work, which don't. What's the soonest that you'll be able to tell your riding public your station is going to be upgraded to ADA standards? When does it begin taking shape?
Oh no, this is something that's going on right now. I feel like maybe we haven't been clear enough. We chose the 70 stations based on a dialogue that happened with members of the community, right? We prioritize stations, and we're going to continue to do that. The other thing that we're doing to try to make sure we're picking up the pace is employing like different contracting strategies. I know this isn't like super interesting civil rights stuff, but what we're trying to do is to do what they call P3s, public-private partnerships, so that we can use new contracting strategies, that we're not always getting the same 5 contractors who are willing to bid, but we're bringing new developers, new players to the table, so that we grow the community of organizations who can do these projects. So we're really on top of how do we do it? And the other variable that we spend a lot of time on, Tim Mulligan is the guru on this, is how do we combine these accessibility upgrades with other major work? So we're getting, every time we go near a station, that we're getting an accessibility project done, but we're also doing, we're doing the work that is benefits from a shutdown on the line, whether it's signaling or track upgrades or other kinds of work. So we're very big on using new strategies, both to grow the universe of contractors and also to get the work done more efficiently in shorter time.
And I asked you about this earlier this morning, but there was that study a few years ago that said the vast majority of stations that were looked at were infeasible, as they were described. What's your hope in terms of technology and advances in reversing that initial
Listen, look, you know, this is like, we love our press corps, but this is how we always focus on glass half empty, right? So we say 95%, okay? So let's say it again. We're talking about 95% commitment. The only reason it's not 100% is that there is an acknowledgement on both sides that there is some small universe of stations where it may be, quote unquote, infeasible, which I believe is the term of art in the federal law, to do this. But the MTA is looking for new engineering solutions, new technology solutions. So, you know, I'm here today to say 95% is the number that is the minimum, but there's no reason why we shouldn't shoot for 100%, knowing that technology is going to change and maybe we can get every station into full accessibility.
All right, thanks everybody. We're going to take a group picture before we take some off-topic questions. So if we can get everybody who's here in the front, Amanda Valdez will help orchestrate the staging. And where is Ray Ramonde? Come on up. We'll just get that picture, and then we're going to wrap it with some questions from the press. Thanks everybody for coming. The time. Photographers are standing by. Come on up, ma'am. We're not going to do it without you. We've got the live feed is continuing. Everybody watching the feed can see the pictures. Do a nice pan across in the control room. They're listening. Come on up, folks. If you've been involved, it's been a long 5 years. This is the moment. All right, say Seaborn. There you go.
Check, check.
All right, folks, we're just going to wrap up the proceedings with the press here. Just doing a little more press business. Probably they're not going to have many questions. Might be 2-3 minutes. But we're going to finish it up. Yeah. All right, hang on just a second. Whenever you have technicians racing behind you, not a good sign. All right, here we go. Folks, if we could just keep the level down in other places for a couple of minutes, just so we could finish the business. You're welcome to stay. Sometimes this is an entertaining portion of the program. You never know what they're going to ask.
Come on, Rich.
Let's, here we go.
I'm quite sure it's going to be.
Here we go. Let's start with Andrew Siff, who we stopped before because he wanted to go off topic. Andrew, if you're ready in the news cruiser for your off topic, we're now at that point of the proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. Minton and Mr. Lieber. My question has to do with safety in the system. Yesterday in the Pennsylvania Avenue station, a detective was assaulted trying to make an arrest. This was on day one of his solo patrol policy, which has now already been scrapped by the city. The city had hoped that by going to solo patrols, they could cover more stations. I'm just wondering, given that part of what you've been talking about today is just how vast your system is, if you're disappointed that this solo patrol system has been scrapped, given that it would have allowed officers to cover more stations.
Listen, I've said it again and again. I am not a criminal justice or law enforcement professional. What I am grateful for and optimistic about is that we have a mayor and a police commissioner who said they want to do what we've been asking for, which is to put cops where our riders feel vulnerable, on platforms and on trains. And they've remained committed to doing that as the centerpiece of their subway safety strategy. Exactly how they do that deployment is obviously up to them. They're the pros. But I just want to be clear that we are very appreciative of the level of commitment that they have shown and continue to show, even as they're working through these deployment issues.
All right, anybody else here have a Clayton Gusa has an off-topic question? That has never happened before. Clayton,
Hey,
New York Daily News.
I wanted to follow up on your you deferring to the FOIL office for answers to the congestion pricing comments and questions from the feds. I guess the larger issue there is, Pat Foy came in, said he was going to reform the FOIL processes here. Didn't really happen. You've come in. I haven't seen much by way of expediting FOILs or anything along those ends. I'm still waiting on years-long requests. So what have you done to speed up the FOIL process, and do you think that the lawyers are going to approve the release of those questions from the feds?
I think I answered the question this morning. I appreciate you asking it again so that we can have the same dialogue. The answer is like the FOIL, the question of whether something is FOIL, is subject to release under FOIL, is a legal decision that I don't have anything to do with, right? I do not get involved in that, even if you would like me to. So I disagree with you that we have not improved the pace of FOIL responsiveness. I'm happy to come back to you with some indicia and some metrics about how we actually have improved the pace of responses to FOIL since I took the chair. Minton will deliver that information forthwith. But as for the decision about any individual FOIL application, I don't get involved in those. But what you're asking about is the bigger question of what were the issues that were raised by the feds in congestion pricing. And I have answered that question pretty clearly a few times, but happy to go back into it if that's what's called for. Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Kevin Duggan from AM New York.
Hello again. My question is probably for Richard. I wanted to see if there was any updated timeline on the Queens bus redesign. I know you're in the draft has been presented to a bunch of people. I know the Brooklyn one's supposed to come out by the end of the year. Is there any next step in the Queens that's happening this year? Any timeline you can give us on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we had a lot of public process and feedback over the last several months, so we're taking that all in. So at this point, our team is looking at that. Other groups have also expressed an interest to give us additional feedback. So I think the one thing that we learned in our previous iterations of bus redesign was to listen, and that's what we're doing. No, I think it's continue to take the, as I said, the comments into consideration. These are incredibly complicated, obviously, bus redesigns, so we don't want to rush it. So no, there's no further steps other than to take those comments. If we need to go back out and get more comments formally, we will. But we're also continuing to take comments from stakeholders and other folks, as we speak.
All right, anybody
Iterative
else?
process still.
Sorry, Rich. Anybody else? No? All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming to 2 Broadway. Appreciate your being here.
Thanks.